My new wife's kids sent me a Christmas wish list. A DJI Mavic 3 Pro drone, $3,200. A gaming PC, $2,800. Two phones, two, one for each of them. And the last line, handwritten in block letters, like a legal addendum. Cash for whatever we want. No cap, no suggested amount. Just cash for whatever. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I typed, "Is this a joke?" Pause. Three dots. Another pause. "Don't be cheap, Wayne. You're the rich stepdad." 4 words. I sat there, put my phone face down on the desk, looked out the window at the backyard. Charlotte, North Carolina. November. The sky low and gray, like a wet towel someone laid over the whole city. I sat for maybe 5 minutes and just looked at the yard I'd spent 2 summers building. The deck I designed myself, the garden beds along the fence. Then I picked up the phone, wrote back, "Got it. I'll handle everything." Crystal sent back 3 hearts and a lightning bolt emoji. I walked into my home office and opened my laptop. She did not know what that smile meant. On Christmas morning, at exactly 9 o'clock, a large refrigerator truck pulled up to our house. Big, professional, with a premium delivery logo on the side I had specifically commissioned for the occasion. 2 movers in matching dark uniforms, serious guys, no small talk, started carrying boxes in. Identical boxes, black ribbon handles, each one roughly a meter by a meter by a meter. Heavy. 12 of them. When the 12th one went in, the living room looked like a fulfillment center. Then one of the movers walked up to Crystal and handed her a sealed envelope. She was already smiling, that finally he came through. Smile. She opened it. Read the first line. The smile shifted. 10 minutes later, the kids started. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you all the way back, because you need the full picture to understand why what happened next was, in my opinion, one of the finest things I have ever done. My name is Wayne Collier. I'm 41 years old. I've lived in Charlotte, North Carolina for almost 9 years now. Before that, I spent a decade in New York City where I learned pretty much everything I know about business. Half of it from success, half of it from making expensive mistakes and paying close attention to how I made them. I run a supply chain optimization company. We help small and mid-sized businesses cut costs on logistics, inventory management, vendor negotiation, last mile efficiency. I know that sounds like the most boring sentence a person has ever spoken out loud at a dinner party. I've watched people's eyes glaze over in real time when I describe it. But here's the thing about boring businesses. They make real money. I started with 1 laptop, 2 clients, and a leased desk in a co-working space. Now I have 32 full-time employees, an office on South End, and an annual revenue I don't talk about in social settings, but which is enough to own the house I'm about to describe without a mortgage, drive the car I want, take the trips I want, and yes, still have money left. I say this not to brag. I say it because it is the entire reason this story exists. I had never been married before Crystal. Not even close, honestly. I had long relationships that ended the way long relationships end. Not in flames, just in a kind of slow, quiet acknowledgement that something wasn't quite right, and a mutual decision to stop pretending otherwise. I was 37 when we met. I'd accepted the possibility that I might just be someone who did things alone, and I had genuinely made peace with that. We met at a restaurant opening in September of the year before last. A client invited me. Crystal was standing near the bar, laughing at someone's joke, and she had this smile that took up her entire face. Not a polite smile, not a performing smile. A real one. We talked for 4 hours that night. She told me about her kids, Bretson, who was 14 at the time, and Madison, who was 12. And the way she talked about them, with this specific, funny, exhausted, devoted warmth, I thought, this is a good mother. This is a good person. We got married 14 months after that first night. Fast? Sure, but I'm an entrepreneur. I know how to recognize a good thing. Or I thought I did. Bretson, 15 years old. The personality of someone who decided at age 7 that he already understood the world and has been patiently waiting for everyone else to catch up. He is not malicious. I want to be clear about that. Bretson is not a bad kid. But in the 9 months we have lived together, I have not once, Not a single time heard him say thank you without being prompted. He has a habit of talking at me rather than to me. Slight, consistent, barely noticeable. Like the difference between looking at someone and looking past them. I noticed it around month 2. He plays basketball beautifully, though. That part I can say without qualification. Madison, 13. If Bretson is passive architecture, Madison is active construction. She knows exactly what she wants. She sees no structural reason why she shouldn't have it immediately. And she has the strategic patience of a chess player when it comes to getting it. She keeps an actual notebook. I have seen it with my own eyes. Titled Things I Need, updated weekly, cross-referenced with price ranges. She once cried at dinner for approximately 6 minutes because I bought the wrong brand of yogurt. Not the wrong flavor, the wrong brand. Then she asked if there was dessert. I watched this and thought, typical teenager, it'll pass. What I didn't fully clock at the time was how precisely she had learned to work crystal. Not cruelly, not calculating in a dark way. More like a scientist who has identified the correct conditions for a particular reaction and reproduces those conditions with consistency. Certain words, certain tone, certain timing. The yield rate was very high. Crystal loves her kids. That is obvious and right, and I am not criticizing it. She is a genuinely devoted mother, and there is nothing wrong with that. But there is a real and important difference between loving your children and being unable to say no to them. And that difference, that small gap, cost all 4 of us a significant amount of grief. Now let me tell you what the 9 months before November actually looked like. We moved into my house in April. 4 bedrooms, a 2-car garage, a back deck I spent 2 summers building, garden beds along the fence line, an outdoor grill setup I'm genuinely proud of. I bought it 5 years earlier for $340,000 and put another $58,000 into it since. It's mine. I love it. I knew that having kids in the house would change things, and I was prepared for that. I wanted to be prepared for that. I was not prepared for the specific shape the changes took. Month 1. Reasonable. Bretson retreats to his room. Madison attempts to rearrange the furniture in the living room because it's not the right energy. Crystal tells her to stop. She stops. Normal adjustment? I chalked it up to everyone finding their footing. Fine. Month 2. Madison tells me she thinks my home office, the room where I earn the money that pays for everything in this house, including the yogurt, would be so much better as a hangout room. I explain calmly that it is my office and I need it to function as my office. She pouts. Crystal says to me, privately in the kitchen, Wayne, she's just a kid. Try not to take it so seriously. I had not taken it seriously. I had stated a simple fact. But okay, month 3, Bretson starts inviting friends over without any notice. Not once. Routinely. 5 guys show up at 7 on a Saturday evening, fill my living room with noise and energy, empty my refrigerator, including, specifically, the lunch I had prepped for myself the next day. Grilled chicken, brown rice, the roasted peppers I'd made from scratch, and stay until midnight. I wait until the next morning and mention to Crystal that a heads up would be nice. Crystal says, Wayne, it's good that he has friends. Yes, it is good. His friends are welcome in my home. The lunch I made is also welcome in my refrigerator until I choose to eat it. These 2 things can coexist. Month 4, the utility bill. My electricity was $180 higher than the same month the previous year. I wasn't shocked. More people in the house, more usage. I get it. But then I noticed that Bretson's gaming setup, monitor, console, secondary device, 2 external drives, runs continuously, day and night. Always on, I ask him politely to turn it off when he's not using it. He says, it loads faster if it stays on. I say, it also costs money if it stays on. He looks at me like I have just said something in a language he doesn't speak. Crystal says, Wayne, it's a small thing. $180 is not a small thing. 12 of those is $2,160 a year. I know because I did the math. Immediately. But I said nothing more about it. I just opened the Notes app and started a document called Running Total. Month 5. Madison needs new sneakers for school. $175 a pair. The other kids all have these. I bought them. Month 6, Bretson's gaming controller broke. $75 replacement. Fine. Month 7, Madison wants to go to a concert with her friend. Tickets were $65 each, transport, food, incidentals. The total I covered was $215. Bretson asked for wireless headphones a few weeks later. $130. Then Madison needed a formal dress for a school event. $195. Then Bretson wanted a specific hoodie from a specific brand. $90. Then Madison mentioned, conversationally, not even as a direct request, just as a piece of information released into the air of the kitchen, that her birthday was in 3 months and she had been thinking about an iPad. I kept buying things. I kept telling myself it was temporary, that this was what being a step-parent meant. Finding your footing, earning trust, showing up consistently. I told myself that resentment is the enemy of family building, and that I was playing a long game. Nobody told me that if you always say yes, people stop seeing it as generosity. They start seeing it as infrastructure, like electricity or running water. You don't thank the house for having electricity. I understood this fully in October. I was walking past Madison's room, and the door was open, and she was on the phone with Crystal. Crystal was downstairs. I could hear both sides of the conversation. And Madison said in this casual, factual tone, like she was reciting a grocery list, "Just tell Wayne I need a new jacket. The other one doesn't look right anymore. Not, I'd like to ask Wayne. Not, do you think we could? Just tell Wayne." Because that's how this works. Tell Wayne and Wayne will cover it. Crystal said, "Sweetie, maybe you should ask him yourself." And Madison said, "It works better when you do it. It works better when you do it." I stood there in the hallway for a moment. Then I walked quietly to my office and sat down and opened that notes document. Added a line. The jacket was $240. I bought it. But I sat with that phrase for a long time. It works better when you do it. That's not a 12-year-old who doesn't know better. That's a 12-year-old who has mapped the system and is navigating it efficiently. And I was the system. The folder I'd been quietly building in my head had a lot of material in it by November. And then came the list. 6 weeks before Christmas, Crystal texted me a screenshot. The caption, "They're so sweet, aren't they?" The screenshot showed 2 handwritten lists on notebook paper, side by side, photographed on the kitchen counter. Bretson's list. DJI Mavic 3 Pro drone, $3,200. Gaming PC. Good one, like $2,500 to $2,800. Bose Quiet Comfort headphones, $350. Cash for whatever I want. Madison's list. iPhone 15 Pro Max. AirPods Pro. Full Rare Beauty Set, $380. Sephora gift card, $200. Cash for whatever I want, no limit. I added it up in about 30 seconds. Somewhere between $9,800 and $11,000, not counting the uncapped cash portions. I stared at it, typed, "Is this a joke?" 3 dots. Pause. 3 more dots. "Don't be cheap, Wayne. You're the rich stepdad." I put the phone down, sat very still for about 45 seconds, then picked it up, wrote, "Got it. I'll handle everything." Watched the 3 hearts arrive and walked to my office and closed the door. I want to be clear about something. I was not angry in a hot way. I wasn't going to explode or shout or make some dramatic scene. That's not how I'm built. I'm built like a supply chain consultant. I see a problem and I think, what does the system actually need? What's the correct intervention? What's the response that creates the most valuable long-term outcome? I opened a blank document and I started typing. Okay, hold on. This is the part of the story where I need you to stay with me for a second. I need you to understand something about who I am before I tell you what I did. I am a calm person, organized, methodical. I built a company from a single laptop over 14 years without ever taking on outside investment and without ever making the same expensive mistake twice. I am not a chaotic person. What I did next was calm, methodical, organized. The scale was merely proportional to the situation. Look, I know. But hear the whole thing before you decide. Over the following 5 weeks, I designed what I began calling, in the document, which grew to 11 pages, the Wayne Collier Christmas Entrepreneurship Academy, WCCEA. I had a logo made. I'm not kidding. I called my friend Marcus, who runs a print shop in Noda, and I said, Marcus, I need complete confidentiality and a very fast turnaround on a project that I cannot fully explain right now. Marcus laughed for about 20 seconds and then said, I'll clear my schedule. Here's what I built: 12 identical boxes, large, professional, craft cardboard with black ribbon handles and a custom WCCEA seal on every lid. A little gold circular stamp that said Wayne Collier Christmas Entrepreneurship Academy, founded 2024. Marcus designed the seal in about an hour. It looked legitimately official, like something a bank would put on a certificate. Inside each box, materials for one business challenge. I also printed currency, custom currency, Collier bucks, full color, legitimate looking bills with my face on them. Because Marcus thought it was the funniest part of the whole project and stayed late to get the design right. My face, on the money. Dignified expression, small denomination on each corner. Marcus sent me a photo at 11:30 at night, and the text said, Wayne, you're going to either save this family or destroy Christmas. I'm supporting both outcomes. I hired Daniel Reeves. He runs Locked In, the most popular escape room company in Charlotte, to help me with the physical logistics and make sure each box had a working lock and key mechanism for the sequential unlock system. Daniel heard the concept in about 8 minutes and said, this is the best thing anyone has ever asked me to build. I'm in. The rules were simple. The 12 boxes open in order, 1 through 12. Each box contains an envelope with a challenge, materials to complete the challenge, and one piece of a 12-part key code. To open the next box, you must complete the current challenge and get my signature of approval. No skipping, no shortcuts. The final box, number 12, opens only when all 12 key fragments are assembled into the full code. What's inside box 12? Not on the instructions anywhere. Not even hinted at. I arranged for a proper delivery truck, movers in uniform, the sealed envelope for Crystal delivered last after all 12 boxes were inside. I slept better the night before Christmas than I had slept in 4 months. Christmas morning, Crystal was up at 8, the way she always is. She came to the kitchen and found me already there with coffee, dressed, calm. She said, did you already put things under the tree? I said, they're on their way. She tilted her head, said, on their way. I said, on their way. She looked at me for one long moment, decided she wasn't going to push it, and poured herself a cup of coffee. At exactly 9 o'clock, the truck pulled up. I had timed it. Bretson and Madison came running from their rooms at the sound of the first box coming through the door. Bretson in basketball shorts and a crumpled t-shirt. Madison in her avocado print pajama set. Both of them looking exactly the way you want kids to look on Christmas morning. Wide-eyed, leaning forward slightly. That particular species of controlled excitement that teenagers try to hide and absolutely cannot. Crystal already had her phone out, filming. The 12 boxes went in. The movers lined them up in 2 rows of 6 along the living room wall. The room looked like the back office of a shipping company. Then the lead mover turned to Crystal, produced the sealed white envelope from his jacket pocket, and said, for you, ma'am. Instructions say open this first. She took it. Smiled, the finally he came through smile. Slid her finger under the flap. Her expression didn't collapse all at once. It shifted, slowly, like watching ice decide to become water. Wayne, Merry Christmas. What is this? Read the second page. She read the second page. Let me walk you through what the letter said, because I wrote it at 2 in the morning, and it is, in my opinion, the finest thing I have produced since my Q3 2021 client report that saved Holbrook Distributing $340,000 in annual overhead. Page 1. Overview. Dear Bretson and Madison, before this morning begins, I want you to understand a few things. First, I think very highly of both of you. Second, I believe that every person who wants good things in life should understand where those things come from. Third, I am an entrepreneur, and for Christmas this year, I've decided to give you something more valuable than things. I'm giving you knowledge, specifically the knowledge of how things get earned. Welcome to the Wayne Collier Christmas Entrepreneurship Academy. 12 boxes, 12 challenges, one final prize, rules on the next page. Page 2, rules, sequential unlock, approval required, Collier bucks, no skipping, no assistance from parents, no hints except those purchased with Collier bucks, which must be earned through bonus tasks. Page 3, the challenge map, a brief description, one line each, of all 12 challenges, labeled only by number, no details, just enough to create mild dread. Page 4, this was Crystal's separate page, folded in half inside the main letter. I am not a cheap stepdad. I am an entrepreneur, and I teach what I know. When you're ready to talk about what rich stepdad means in our family, I'm ready. But first, look at your kids. Crystal read that page, folded it in half, and put it in the pocket of her robe. She did not say anything. I sipped my coffee. Bretson walked up to the first box and put his hands on the lid. Said, "So, can we?" Madison materialized at his shoulder and said, "We open it together." Box number 1. Inside, 2 sets of branded office supplies, a notebook for each of them, embossed with their names and the title Chief Executive Officer, in gold lettering, a pen, a stapler, document folders, paper clips, 2 sets of official-looking onboarding paperwork, and the sealed challenge envelope. Madison held up her notebook and stared at her name on the cover for 4 full seconds. I watched her face cycle through 3 different emotions. Then she opened the envelope. Challenge 1, business plan, 45 minutes. Write a 1-page business plan for a company of your choosing. Must include company name, product or service description, target customer, pricing, and a strategy for finding the first 5 clients. The key fragment for box 2 is locked inside a folder. It releases when I sign your plan. That's it? Bretson said. That's it. He sat down at the dining room table, opened his notebook, wrote at the top, in capital letters, NXIS Gaming Repair, controllers and accessories for gamers. Madison sat across from him, chewed on her pen for 30 seconds, then wrote, Glow Up Studio Professional Hair Services for Teens. Crystal watched from the kitchen doorway. I brought her more coffee. She did not thank me, but she took it. 40. 1 minute later, Bretson handed me 3 pages. He'd written more than required. He'd included a competitor analysis and a section on quality guarantees. Madison handed me 1.5 pages that included a price list, a list of 6 potential clients by name, and a hand-drawn logo. I read both, signed both. 2 key fragments. Crystal said, from the couch, Wayne, it's still Christmas morning. I said, I know. Box 2, box number 2. Inside, Collier bucks. Each of them got $50 in the new currency. I had Marcus print denominations of 1s, 5s, and 10s. All with my face, all slightly more dignified looking than they had any right to be. Also inside, a challenge envelope and a note explaining that Collier bucks could be earned, spent, and lost according to a set of rules in the enclosed economy guide. Challenge 2. First, sale. You have 60 minutes and a starting capital of 50 Collier bucks. Make a sale to at least 1 real customer. Price, minimum 5 Collier bucks. Proof, customer's signature. What customers? Madison asked. There's nobody here. I walked to the front door and opened it. My brother Derek, 37, lives 20 minutes away. I'd called him a week before and said, I need you here at 10 sharp. Do not be late. I will explain everything when you arrive. Came through the door with his wife Tamara and their 2 kids, 8-year-old Owen and 11-year-old Lily. Derek took one look at the rows of boxes, looked at me, and said, You actually did it. Tamara immediately pulled out her phone and started filming. Behind them, my neighbor Gloria, 68 years old, retired high school principal, the most formidable woman on our street, who had seen Derek's car and come over to check what was happening. Gloria surveyed the scene with the expression of a person who has walked into something significantly more interesting than expected. and is very pleased about it. I had given Derek, Tamara, Gloria, and the kids each a small envelope of Collier bucks on their way in. Briefed them outside. Told them, just be customers. Make it real. Bretson walked straight to Owen and said, I repair gaming controllers. Mine is the best in Charlotte. Can I look at yours? Owen said, mine has a broken joystick. Bretson said, 5 Collier bucks, 30-minute turnaround. Owen looked at Tamara. Tamara nodded. Owen handed over his $5. Deal closed. Madison walked up to Derek and said, I'm offering professional hairstyling. 10 Collier bucks. Derek said, I'll take it. What followed was 12 minutes of Madison working on Derek's hair with a comb and some product she'd retrieved from somewhere. And the result was something Derek himself described as Steve Harvey after a tornado. He paid. Madison pocketed the money with zero apology for the outcome. Gloria watched this entire sequence with unconcealed delight. 2 more key fragments. Boxes 3 through 6 arrived over the next 2 hours. Box 3, accounting. Each kid got a printed spreadsheet, paper, yes, and had to log their earnings and expenses from the simulation and explain the difference between revenue and profit. Bretson Googled it in 7 minutes and wrote a clean, accurate answer. Madison looked at the question, looked at her brother's paper, looked at me and said, this isn't Christmas. This is the SAT. I said, business doesn't care about holidays. She rolled her eyes so dramatically you could hear it. Then she wrote a correct answer. By this point, Gloria had settled into the armchair I privately thought of as mine and declared herself the Academy's official adjudicating judge. Nobody disagreed. She had that energy. Box 4, marketing. Cardboard, markers, and 20 minutes to create an advertisement for their business. Bretson made something minimal and dark and genuinely kind of cool. Madison made something pink and sparkly with actual sticker embellishments. I took both posters and taped them to the refrigerator. They are still there. Crystal tried to take them down twice in January. Both times I put them back. Box 5, negotiation. Convince me to buy your service at the highest possible price. 5 minutes of preparation. Bretson delivered a structured pitch with feature points, a timeline, and a warranty. It was legitimately good. Madison walked up, looked at me, and said, if you don't buy, I'm not eating dinner. I said, that's not negotiation. That's hostage taking. She said, it's effective hostage taking. I laughed out loud for the first time all morning. Gave her full marks. Box 6, customer service. I had printed complaint cards for each of our guests. Fictional grievances their fictional customers had filed. Gloria's card said she was a difficult client who wanted a full refund, a new appointment, and a formal apology for emotional distress caused by an unsatisfactory blowout. She played this role with the commitment of a trained actress. She stood over Madison with crossed arms and said, I have never in my life been more disappointed in a service professional, and I want you to know that. Madison didn't flinch. She said, I completely understand your frustration. I'd like to offer you 20% off your next visit and a complimentary style upgrade. Gloria considered this, said, that's acceptable. They shook hands. Gloria sat back down and said quietly but audibly, that child has a future. Crystal was on her second glass of wine. It was 11:30 in the morning. She was also, I noticed, no longer looking irritated. She was watching. By box 9, the living room had expanded. Derek had texted his friend Cody, who lived nearby. Cody had come with his wife Nicole. Nicole had texted 2 friends from the next block. Gloria's neighbor Sandra had driven past, seen the cars, and walked over just to say hello, which in neighborhood terms means I heard something was happening and I am not missing it. There were now 14 people in my living room, several of them holding Collier bucks they had traded or wagered among themselves. Tamara had been filming continuously since 10 in the morning. Box 7, time management. Create a weekly schedule that includes school, business development, personal time, and household contribution. Madison produced a schedule so color-coded and detailed that Tamara photographed it separately. Box 8, partnership. Create a joint venture concept with your co-founder. They had to work together. Bretson proposed Nexus X Glow Up, gaming accessories with custom aesthetic branding, specifically for girls who game. Madison said, no, then said, wait, what if the controllers are pink? Bretson said, I can do pink. 20 minutes later, they had a brand concept, a product line, and a price point. Cody, who turned out to be a regional manager at an insurance company, gave them actual feedback on their pitch. Serious feedback. They incorporated it. Box 9. Inside, a blank piece of paper, one for each of them, and a card that said, write a letter to someone who has done something meaningful for you that you have never properly thanked. Nothing else. No rules about who. No requirements about what. I put the box down and walked to the kitchen. Bretson sat with his paper for 11 minutes. I know because I was watching the clock, pretending to refill my coffee. Then he stood up, walked across the room, and handed the folded paper to me. Not to Crystal. To me. I opened it. 4 sentences. The third one said, you never got angry at me out loud, even when I probably deserved it. I folded it back up, put it in my chest pocket. Good work, I said. Next box. Crystal was looking out the window. Box 10. Failure. Each kid received a crisis card, an unexpected event that would damage their fictional business. Bretson's card said his main client had canceled, and he'd already spent the materials budget. Madison said a former client had left a devastating public review, and her classmates were reading it. They worked through their responses out loud while 14 people listened. Little Owen, who had been running around the house with a collier buck in his fist for 2 hours, climbed onto the couch next to Bretson and said, you should find a new client. Bretson said, yeah, that's exactly right, buddy. Owen beamed. Box 11. Inside, a small round mirror for each of them, and a card that said the most important resource in any business is the person you see in the mirror. Remember that. The key fragment is closer than you think. They looked at each other. They looked confused. They looked at me. I nodded toward their CEO badges from box 1. Bretson turned his over. Madison turned hers over. On the back of each badge, half of a 12-digit code. They pressed the badges together. They had the code. Everyone in the room who had been there long enough to understand what was happening went quiet. Box 12. Crystal set down her wine glass. Madison entered the code. The lock mechanism clicked. Daniel had built it well. The lid opened. Inside, 2 envelopes, one with Bretson's name, one with Madison's, and a third envelope, smaller, with Crystal's name written in my handwriting. Bretson and Madison opened theirs simultaneously. Inside each, an official document from my bank, printed on letterhead, confirming the opening of a savings account in their name with an initial deposit of $1,500. Subtitle, WCCEA Seed Capital, Your First Business Fund. Below that, a signed agreement from me. If, within 1 calendar year from today, you generate $100 in documented revenue from a real business, I will add $1,000 to this account. They stared at the documents. Madison looked up at me and said, if I start a TikTok account and charge for styling tutorials, does that count? I said, if there's a real client paying real money, yes. She nodded. Once. Slowly. With the focus of someone who has just received a brief that they intend to execute. Crystal opened her envelope. 1 page, handwritten by me. It said, I'm not a cheap stepdad. I'm an entrepreneur. I teach what I know. The things these kids asked for on that list would have taken me about 40 minutes to buy online and would have taught them nothing. What happened this morning that took me 5 weeks to build, and they'll carry it longer than any drone. Whenever you're ready to talk about what rich stepdad means in this family, I'm ready. But first, look at your kids. She looked up from the page. Bretson was reading his bank document for the 3rd time, moving his lips slightly. Madison was already on her phone, opening TikTok. Crystal folded the letter carefully, put it in her robe pocket, said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, to the room rather than to me, does anyone else need more coffee? Gloria raised her hand. Now here's the part I genuinely did not plan. Tamara had been filming since 10 in the morning. She edited it that afternoon. The box is arriving, Gloria as the difficult customer, the Steve Harvey after a tornado hair incident, Derek paying Madison with full dignity despite looking unhinged. Madison and Bretson negotiating their joint venture, the final box, the expressions on everyone's faces when they open their envelopes. And she posted it to TikTok at around 7 in the evening with the caption, "My brother-in-law gave his stepkids a full business academy for Christmas instead of a wish list. This is the most unhinged and beautiful thing I have ever witnessed. In person." Full explainer in comments. I found out about this the next morning when Derek called me at 8:17 and said, "Wayne, have you been on TikTok this morning?" I said, "Derek, I have never voluntarily opened TikTok in my life." He said, "Tamara's video has 80,000 views. 80,000. Overnight. I made Derek send me the link and watched it in my kitchen with coffee. It was 3 minutes and 40 seconds, and it was very well edited." The comments were, "This man created a curriculum in December out of spite, and it's better than anything my school ever taught me." The Collier bucks with his face on them. I cannot. Okay, but the Steve Harvey tornado hair is sending me directly to the hospital. The little boy who told him to find a new client and got the world's most enthusiastic response from a 15-year-old is the best thing I've seen this year. The girl who immediately opened TikTok and started planning her first client was already operating. That child is going to be terrifying. By Thursday, 340,000 views. By the following Monday, over 800,000. Crystal, who on Christmas evening had said, "Can you ask Tamara to take it down?" by Wednesday was reposting it to her own Instagram stories with the caption, "My husband is a lot, but he's never wrong." That was the first time she used the word husband in a caption, incidentally. Here is where the fallout became its own secondary event. On the Tuesday after Christmas, our neighbor Sandra, who had been present for Box 9 and onward and had watched Bretson hand me that folded letter, told someone in the neighborhood book club about it. The book club has 11 members. 3 of them asked for details. One of them, a woman named Bernadette, who I have never met, posted a summary to the Charlotte Families Facebook group with the caption, "I heard about this secondhand, and I need to know if it's real." It was real. The post got 212 comments by the next morning, divided roughly between, "This is the most creative parenting move I've ever heard of," and, "But did the kids get actual presents?" And a very small but vocal contingent of "The Collier bucks with his face are the funniest thing in any of this." My Aunt Veronica, 72, lives in Raleigh. Present for none of this in person, but absolutely present in spirit. Saw Tamara's TikTok through a Facebook share from someone she knows. She called me on Friday at 7:20 in the evening. I remember because I was watching a game. "Wayne, hey, Aunt Veronica. I watched the video. Tamara's?" And the one someone else made from the comments. And 2 reaction videos. "Wayne, she paused. Your wife called you cheap." "She did." 3 seconds of silence. Then, "Good thing you're an entrepreneur and not a regular person. A regular person would have been hurt. You turned it into a semester." Another pause. "But you pass this along. Cheapness has nothing to do with money. It has to do with whether you see the person next to you." She should have understood that before she typed it. Then, "Your father would have found this extremely satisfying." I said, "Aunt Veronica, can I quote you on that?" She said, "I'll text it to you word for word." She sent it at 9 the next morning. Daniel Reeves, the escape room designer, texted me on the same Friday and said, "Wayne, I'm getting inquiries. 3 people found me through Tamara's comments asking if I helped design the box system and whether I offer something similar for hire." I said, "What did you tell them?" He said, "I told them I was already developing a product line and would be in touch." I said, "Are you?" He said, "I am now." We had coffee the following week. Gloria, my neighbor, the adjudicating judge of the academy, stopped me on the street on New Year's Eve and said, "Wayne, I told my Wednesday knitting circle about your academy. There are 26 women in that circle, and 14 of them want to know if you're selling the program." I said, "Gloria, I didn't build it to sell it." She looked at me with the expression of a retired principal who has heard approximately 9,000 incorrect things in her career and said, "Everything is sellable, dear. You, of all people, should know that." I thought about it for a while, then called Daniel. February brought something I hadn't expected, and I'm still sitting with it. It was a Saturday morning. I was in my office working, door open, music low. I heard footsteps in the hall, then a knock on the doorframe. Bretson, hands in the pockets of his hoodie, not asking for anything, not needing anything fixed or bought or decided. Just standing there. "Can I come in?" "Yeah, come in." He sat in the chair across from my desk and looked around at the shelves, the whiteboards with logistics diagrams, the framed version of our company org chart from year one. 8 names, 2 of them mine under different roles, versus the current one I'd hung next to it. "Did you always know you wanted to do this?" he said. "No," I said. "I thought I was going to be an architect for a long time." He looked surprised. "Seriously?" "Seriously." I drew buildings for about 2 years in college. Then I took a supply chain course as an elective, and I realized I was more interested in how systems work than in how structures look. He nodded slowly, said, "Can I come in here sometimes?" "Not for anything, just to sit." "Yeah," I said. "Anytime." He came back the next Saturday, and the one after that. We don't talk much when he's in there. He does his homework, or draws, or just sits. But he comes. That means something. I don't know exactly what yet, but it means something. By March, Madison's TikTok, she named it Maddie Glow Up, which I have to admit is a good name, had 72,000 followers. She'd launched with a video explaining what the Academy had been like from her perspective, titled, "My stepdad gave me a business lecture for Christmas, and I'm not even mad about it." It got more views than Tamara's original post. The comments on that one are something else. Grown adults writing, "This 13-year-old just made me feel worse about my career choices than my actual manager." And her stepdad sent Collier bucks with his face on them. And honestly, respect. She booked her first paying hair client, a classmate, $15 for a style, on week 3. Then 2 more the week after. She came to me on a Sunday with a printed receipt and said, "I earned $112. I verified it, transferred the $1,000 to her account, and said, "Now keep going." She said, "Oh, I am." Bretson repaired controllers for 4 regular clients in the neighborhood, earned his $100 by week 7. I made the transfer. He said thanks. He said it without being prompted. I noticed that Crystal and I talked about it, the real version of the conversation, not the surface one, about 6 weeks after Christmas. Sunday evening, kids at a friend's house, just the 2 of us at the kitchen table with what was left of a bottle of wine. She said, "I didn't think about it the way you did." I said, "I know. I meant that you have the money and they wanted things, and I thought, I know what you thought. And now I think if you just bought the list, they'd already be asking for the next list." Yeah. She was quiet for a moment. The kitchen was quiet. I could hear the refrigerator. Then she said, "I'm sorry about what I wrote. The cheap thing." "I know. I don't actually think that. I was just being defensive because I already felt weird about the list, and I deflected onto you." I looked at her. "Is that an analysis you arrived at yourself, or did you talk it through with someone?" She smiled. Derek's wife. "She is very direct." "She really is," she said, and I'm quoting Crystal, "The man made a curriculum out of his frustration. He didn't yell, he built something. You owe him, at minimum, a real conversation, and at maximum, a monument." I laughed. Tamara should be a therapist. She says the same thing. We sat there for a while, just the 2 of us, and the refrigerator. "The posters are still on there," she said, nodding toward the fridge. "I know. Maddie Glow Up's logo is actually really good." "It is." She refilled her glass. Offered me the bottle. I took it. Are we a perfect family now? We are not. Madison still updates her Things I Need notebook. I saw it last week. But the new entries are things like ring light for videos and small desk organizer for client scheduling, not $3,200 drones. Progress. Bretson still leaves his gaming setup on overnight sometimes, but when I mention it now, he says, "Oh, yeah, sorry," and turns it off. That's not nothing. Crystal still sometimes says, don't overcomplicate it, in situations where I might be overcomplicating it. She is, I should admit, not always wrong about that. And me? I bought $11,000 worth of items and gave none of them. I built a 12-stage business academy in 5 weeks because my wife texted me, don't be cheap. I commissioned currency with my own face on it. Daniel and I are now in early development on a legitimate product, a family entrepreneurship kit with proper materials, a facilitator guide, and yes, a place to order the custom currency if you want it. The Collier bucks are patented. I'm not kidding. What I learned from all of this, and I've thought about it more than I expected to, is that the most expensive thing you can do for the people you love is give them whatever they ask for without question. The second most expensive thing is waiting until you're angry to explain that. I waited too long, and when I finally acted, I had to build a whole academy about it. That's on me. I should have had the conversation earlier, in a quieter voice, before the Christmas list became the breaking point. But I'll tell you this. Those kids know something now that they did not know in November. They know that things come from somewhere. They know that a good pitch is better than a good pout. They know that the woman who negotiated a 20% discount for an unsatisfied fictional client at 11 years old has a future. And they know that I see them, not as extensions of Crystal's first chapter, not as obligations, as actual people I'm interested in. Bretson's last letter to me is still in my chest pocket. I moved it to the pocket of every jacket I've worn since Christmas. It's getting soft at the fold lines. That's the souvenir I kept.